And talk about budget and how the government will utilize this the big final budget before getting into state elections, the national election next year, the one full final budget to send out message to the economy, which side of the economy is actually given priority in terms of capital expenditure. How do they actually do a math between not diverging much from the fiscal consolidation path and yet pump priming the economy? To answer all of those, and of course the risky issue of long-term capital gains, I have with me a special voice joining us on the show today. Mr. Arun Kumar, Chairman and CEO of KPMG India, is here with me on the show. Mr. Kumar, good afternoon and thanks very much for your time joining us right one day ahead of the very important budget for the markets, for the corporate and overall for the economy. This time round there seemed to be an occasion where the government will be required to do a tightrope walk between, on the one hand, not really loosening their grip on the fisc much, but on the other hand, the need and requirement to really boost the economy without any wasteful expenditure, particularly on the rural side. Do you think they would be able to manage and strike a balance between the two?
Yeah, my thoughts are the economic survey gives us some really good pointers. For instance, on the revenue collection front, there's been a nice increase of 18% in revenue collections in the first 9 months. The income tax payer base has widened by 1.8 million accounts over the natural growth rate. The GST net has now embracing 50% more taxpayers than before. So having a wider tax base and having more compliance, and all of this starting with around November 2016 and picking up with the GST, provides a pretty good foundation for increased revenues. That will definitely help the fiscal side. In addition, privatization, which last year did well, but not as well as was planned. But more privatization is planned this year, including Air India, as was mentioned in the economic survey. These are the elements that I feel will help on the positive side of the fiscal equation.
Mr. Kumar, the big question is that the farm side, the rural side, even economic data coming out from the economic survey seem to be suggesting that that side of the economy is quite sluggish and weak, and the expectations are that this is actually going to be a rural budget, because that is one part of the economy which actually requires government's specific attention in the light of data and what the other strategists are also talking about. Do you think that would happen? And if yes, what specific areas do you think the government would particularly focus on?
Economic survey did point to the fact that agriculture is growing only by 2.1%, when we expect the overall economy to grow between 7 and 7.5%. That's a very major issue, especially since a lot of India still lives in the rural areas. So we would expect to see in the budget some policy initiatives that would deal with small farms, maybe integration of farms, as well as address initiatives to improve the transportation from the farm to the table, for example, in the area of cold chain, in logistics and so forth. So we would expect to see a fair amount of focus on the agricultural sector.
Sir, one of my colleagues, Ruchi Bhatia, did break a exclusive story from her sources on our channel, that standard deduction is something which the government is going to definitely make changes in order to put more money into the hand of salaried people. What are your thoughts on this particular issue? Do you think this will be tinkered with? And if yes, how beneficial can it be, particularly in light of putting more money in the hand of the people, citizens, to boost more consumption into the economy? Do you think that was a good idea?
I think increasing the slabs or increasing the level for standard deductions would be very valuable. Putting more money in the pockets of salary taxpayers especially would be very good for the economy, especially at a time that the economy is going to be driven quite a bit by consumer spending. In my view, that would be very beneficial and would be welcome.
From the FII side then, foreign institutional investors, the flows have been slightly muted in the last couple of months in 2017. They barely picked up in 2018 January. From the FII side, because you do interact with a lot of them, as part of your client base. What are the expectations running like from this budget?
So I would say with foreign direct investors, there will be a big focus on ease of doing business as well as tax certainty. I think a number of the measures the government has taken, including disbanding the FIPB, including increasing the openness to foreign investment, all of that's very, very valuable. I would continue to see a greater focus on ease of doing business and liberalizing foreign direct investment on the path that the government has been. That those would be welcome steps. I think in terms of foreign policy on foreign portfolio investments and other foreign investment, it would be important not to tinker with what we have today. We actually have a pretty good picture. We're seeing a nice increase in FPIs. We've seen a good increase in FDI. So why tinker with topics like long-term capital gains, especially at a time when foreign portfolio investors have many other places to look, including, for instance, the United States, where the stock market's doing well, where there's a tax reform underway. So I would not expect to see any tinkering with the long-term capital gains aspect.
Mr. Kumar, let's shift focus to another dire requirement of the economy, and that is capacity expansion, particularly capex from the PSU side. In gross capital formation from the private is lagging. PSU is clearly taking the lead so far. Do you think spending on infrastructure, rural roads, rural electrification, all those areas will actually come about this time? Also not raising expenditure much on subsidies, because that's what one is expecting from the market standpoint.
I think public spending on infrastructure, I would expect, will have to continue. It has been one of the major drivers of economic growth. We've had good spending over the last several years, and we will begin to see the results of that. For instance, the expansion of national highways, now the focus on regional airports through UDAN, Sagarmala. So a number of these connectivity initiatives are extremely valuable, both in terms of generating employment as well as improving logistics, which is going to be critical to the growth of the economy. So I would expect to see more investment in those areas. I would also expect to see an increase in other forms of funding. One of the bright spots, for example, is municipal bonds, where the city of Pune is embarking on municipal bonds. We would expect to see more such initiatives to supplement normal government funding.
Mr. Kumar, how are businesses across sectors and across the country which you deal with coping with GST? The collection data seem to be indicating that after having 2 bad months where collections dipped, the collections are coming back on track. At least the latest data is showing that. Clearly, this will not be part of the budget, but one wants to understand where the trend is shaping up in terms of collections.
Yeah, I think a lot of the teething troubles are behind us, though not all of them are. There are still issues, there are still some system issues, there are issues for exporters collecting refunds. So there are a number of areas that still need to be worked on. But the overall trend, I'd say, is that a lot of the speed bumps are behind us. As the economic survey points out, a lot more of the economy has come into the formal sector via the GST. So I think the outlook is going to be positive. It was always known that a transformational initiative like GST, is one of the largest tax transformations anywhere in the world, will come with its raft of problems. So it was to be expected that there will be speed bumps. We've had them, but I think we're working through them.
So last question to you would be, from this platform, in your view, what kind of message can the government give mainly to overseas investors? Because this is clearly will be the last full budget, and a lot of issues the investors are wanting government to address. It will be a difficult task to address all of them, but net, the big message you think government will send out would be what?
I think to investors, the best messages would be that they will continue on the path of tax reform, that signals on corporate tax, either a reduction or a clear path to reduction, because that's becoming a competitive issue globally. As you well know, the United States has reduced its corporate tax. It's one of the major places where foreign direct investment happens, and also happens from. So it's important that India gets competitive in the corporate tax rate area. So that's one area. The second is just tax stability, to ensure that there's comfort, that there'll be consistency and predictability in the tax regime. And finally, as I mentioned, the ease of doing business, which the government has put a big focus on, as evidenced by the progress in the World Bank's rankings.
All right, sir, we'll let you go on that one. Thank you so much for your time joining us on the show and talk about KPMG India's expectations from the budget 2018. Let's shift